Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Yes, it's afternoon, and there's a reason I am waiting so long to do this video, and that is because I want to go over timing and ratios. Now, both of my starters were fed yesterday morning at about 10 or 11 o'clock, I'm not sure. But for timing, for my own timing purposes, I want to feed my starter in the evening. So I have to gradually move the feeding time later and later. That said, you don't want to feed your starter more than once in 24 hours. There are some bakers out there and some micro bakers who will feed their starter every 12 hours, and that's fine for them if they're going to use their starter that much. But if you're just baking at home a couple of loaves a week or whatever it is that you want to achieve with your starter, then once every 24 hours is plenty of time. Okay, you're not going to hurt it in any sense of the word. You won't kill it, and you will, in time, you'll learn to work to what works for you. I mean, to mix and to bake around your schedule. So that's how you will learn when to feed your starter, when to bulk it up, that sort of thing. So now you'll see me mixing my new starter first, and that's Daniel DeLewis. And he is getting very healthy, and he's coming along really well. I'm really impressed with his with his performance because, I mean, especially in the last few days, I've been struggling a little, mostly because of my sleeping habits. But that said, you'll see how runny these starters are. They're runny. They haven't been fed since yesterday morning, as I said. And the longer you wait to feed them after the 24-hour period is up, the runnier they'll become. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. You don't want them to get out of hand, however. And what I mean by that is if you leave them sitting on your counter for several days, you may risk killing them. But starter, as long as it's established, it will survive most things. And if you don't feed it for several days or a week or whatever, it develops what's called hooch on the top. And if you leave your starter in the refrigerator for a very long time, we'll talk about this later, it develops a hooch. And all that is an alcohol that is produced from the fermentation process. And it protects the starter. Excuse me. And some bakers mix it in after they revive their starter. Some dump it out. It doesn't matter either way. So, that said, when it comes to timing, you want to figure out when you want to mix your dough and when you want to bake it. If you want to mix your dough in the morning, then you want to bulk up your starter in the evening the night before, okay? And you want to use a higher ratio. The ratio will be a 1 to 10 ratio. Or, there's a couple of different ways to do this. Or it can be a 1 to 5 ratio. It can be a 1 to 2 ratio. It just depends on how long you want your starter to take to get to its peak period. Okay? You never want to use your starter before it's at its peak. And that is key here. Keep that in mind. You want your starter to be at its peak, and even if it starts to fall, it's still perfectly fine to use, okay? So you have a bit of a window after it reaches its peak. And you'll know when your starter is at its peak by its bubbly top. It'll be 2 or 3 times higher than when you started, and it will smell like bread, and it will smell so good. I don't know about you, but when I smell my starter, I want to bake. It makes me want to bake. So anyway, when you use a higher ratio, you want to lower the amount of unfed starter that you're putting into your clean jar. And when I bulk up my starter, sometimes it depends on, like I said, it depends on what I'm making. But sometimes I start at 10 grams of unfed starter. Sometimes I start at 5 grams of unfed starter. It depends on how I feel. If I'm at 5 grams of starter, I'm feeding my starter 70 to 80 grams of water and 70 to 80 grams of flour, okay? It all depends on what you're doing with it. And in the beginning, you'll just be making bread. It depends on a lot of things. But it's all around you and your schedule. So keep that in mind as well. If you want to mix it in the afternoon, I would say between 1 and 3 o'clock, and have it in the refrigerator by 9 or 10 o'clock at night, then you can get up early. And when I say early, I mean between 5 and 7 a.m. and feed your starter however much you're going to need. And we'll talk about that as well. And by 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it could be ready to bake. Ready to mix. So, again, all of this, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on your ratio. What ratio are you using to feed? If you want to bake the same or mix the same day as you feed your starter, you use a lower ratio so that it doesn't take as long for your starter to get to peak. If you want to mix the next day, you feed in the evening and you mix at a higher ratio. So it takes your unfed starter longer to eat and to reach its peak. I hope this makes sense. I really do. So, you'll see me here. I'm mixing brew. This is my established starter. And I go over, this is another trick that I use to keep her healthy. I use the 1 to 5 to 5 ratio. And if I'm not baking, I put in an extra 5 to 10 grams of flour just to keep her healthy. If she starts to smell acidic, then I will give her 10 grams of wheat flour and the rest will be bread flour. And that just gives her a boost. It strengthens her and gets rid of the acidic nature that she's falling under. And don't think for a minute that once your starter is established, it takes a lot to kill it. Okay? It took me a month of not feeding it to kill mine. So keep that in mind. That is it for today. Come back tomorrow for day 16. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your evening. I'll see you in the next one.